Am I the a-hole for how I punished my stepdaughter for flushing her sister's spices down the toilet? I male 42 married my current wife when my daughter, 16, was 4 and my stepdaughter, 14, was 2. They grew up as if they were blood siblings with occasional disagreements and jealousy issues mostly from my stepdaughter. 2 days ago was my daughter's dog's 3rd death's anniversary. Usually, at that time she'd rather be alone to write poems or look at pictures of her beloved dog. This year she asked me to go with her to visit his grave, which is located in her grandparents' farm. My wife appreciates my daughter's need to have time alone, but my stepdaughter wanted to come with us though she wasn't close to the dog. My daughter refused to let her come and only wanted me to go. My stepdaughter threw a fit and insisted on coming. I sat her down to explain her sister's need for space that day. She stopped after that. We left and 15 minutes later my wife texted me that my stepdaughter had a breakdown and didn't stop crying, then flushed all her sister's spices that were in separate containers down the toilet. They were a gift from my daughter's Asian friend's mom since my daughter's into Asian food and cooks meals every week. I was stunned. I called my wife but got no response. My daughter asked what's wrong, but I just dropped her off at her grandparents' farm then went back home. My stepdaughter refused to come out of her room, yelling that my daughter deserved it for excluding her like that. I was pissed. I told her I'd punish her for wasting spices that were important to her sister that she shouldn't even touch by taking from her saving to pay for the damages, but my wife thought I'd only take away privileges, not money my stepdaughter saved. She said she's still a kid and she won't let me touch her saving but will pay herself. But if my wife paid, then my stepdaughter will think her behavior is okay. She also said my daughter is to blame too for not letting her stepsister come with her. She acted as if she never goes to the farm, though I take them there twice a month. I argued that this was, in my opinion, the right punishment to get this resolved, but my wife said I was only making my stepdaughter resent me because she wants the money for a new bicycle. We kept disagreeing on this and all I was thinking of was my daughter's reaction when I told her. She was devastated, but I assured her I was taking steps to help her replace all the spices she lost. My wife called me cruel. The consequence you came up with is absolutely fair. Since when do consequences need to be adapted and tailored to the kid's preferences? You also shouldn't be afraid to insist on a consequence just because she's your stepdaughter. You've raised her most of her life. Moreover, what she did was wrong. So she wanted to save up for a new bicycle. Well, her sister wanted to save those spices for cooking a meal. She owes her sister monetary compensation. The whole point is to show her that it's not worth doing something like this again. If your stepdaughter is sad/upset about this consequence, that means it's working. NTA. Oh my goodness, yes. My son is 8 and is having a hard time accepting consequences for his actions. Yesterday he missed a portion of the visit with my in-laws and his stepbrothers as his punishment was to stay in his room. The visit was in the front yard. Because of his age, he gets the opportunity to have a redo when he understands his actions. It is frustrating to enforce a lot of the time, but I am doing it now to help make him a more compassionate person later. Actually, crying face, as someone who has vivid memories of all the times my mom showed me how to be a good human being, my feelings be damned, I'm now in my 40s with some serious respect for parents like Hop who do what's needed. I hated my mom for what she did then, and today, I'm a good person because of those values she gave me. And my dad. The one time, only once in my lifetime, I won an argument against them, was the time they were trying to forego their own values and I stuck to what they taught me. If your ST does not appreciate what you're doing for her now, trust in your own upbringing of her, that she will one day. She might not, to be fair. A 14-year-old who does something like that? Sounds like there are pretty big issues at play here that the spices incident is a symptom of, not the underlying cause of. I'd say punishment here wouldn't serve much purpose. She'll spend the time thinking about how unfair it all is and find different, less obvious, ways to get her own back in future. What she's done here is a big plea for attention. I'd be looking to find out why if she were mine. It's not a normal 14-year-old response to this sort of situation. I want to be a bit more optimistic. Look, I could tell you stories all day about how much I threw tantrums as a teen, how little I appreciated my parents, all the crap I pulled, and literally half the time there was no reason for me to do that stuff. I have the unique perspective of having lost my parents but having my uncle and aunt who are my other parents, and I can tell you, my whole life surprises them. How I could be as financially responsible, choose the partner I ended up with, Instead of the crappy boyfriends they saw me with, how I lived my life after I lost my mom unexpectedly, how I am with them, after being an absolute brat and despite my parents not spoiling me by giving in to my whims, still being quite spoilt about certain things. I was awful as a teen and I get out and I realize that it's having a parent like Hop who wasn't afraid of their kids screaming in their faces, that made me everything I am today. Probably not the best, and I definitely don't care to defend him, but I did learn empathy which I am grateful for. It's not like he was scary or anything. Actually, when he was seeking to teach a lesson to me he was quite calm about it. His methods are definitely questionable but I'd like to think I'm a well-rounded individual. That being said, if the hamster situation was in his hands, I'd imagine actually something more like a field trip to a slaughterhouse or something lol. Probably not actually doable but something along those lines. Agreed. He was 4 years old. You don't expect a 4-year-old to take perfect care of a dog that you haven't checked on the entire night. You definitely explain to a 4-year-old what they did was wrong, but as a parent you are responsible for the dog, you don't leave that up to your toddler. Consistency is the main thing. Most parents go wrong when they accidentally encourage bad behavior because it's cute/funny. Like, the kid tells a joke and everyone laughs. The kid, being clueless, tells the same joke again 5 minutes later and everyone laughs again to be polite. So the kid repeats and repeats and repeats because if it was funny before, it's totally funny the 100th time, right? Eventually the parent blows up and punishes the kid but never explains why the joke is suddenly not okay. The solution is really just having good communication skills and realizing that you actually have to teach your child these skills. When they repeat the joke the first time, instead of laughing politely like they'll magically get the hint that less enthusiastic laughter means they should move on to a new joke, you say jokes are only funny the first time then offer them a different joke. They laugh and you encourage them to come up with their own new joke. Give kids age-appropriate joke books. This strategy is true for all of parenting. Model and encourage good behavior and don't accidentally encourage bad behavior. When a kid is acting out because they want attention, you have to punish the bad behavior, but not deny them the attention that they're asking for. You do this by having a conversation discussing the correct way to say I'm feeling neglected. Every person was once a child. Do the things your parents did right, don't do the things your parents did wrong. I don't punish my kids, I talk to them. It's working out great. That's not to say they don't have consequences to their actions. It means that in most instances a punishment isn't going to accomplish anything. Sneaking video game time when you know you shouldn't? I'm not going to ground you, I'm going to talk about honesty and responsibility. Keep doing it? Well, now you can't be trusted with that rule and I will restrict your ability to break it. I'm a preschool teacher. I needed to borrow something from another teacher down the hall. They were outside, door in classroom led to outside courtyard, so after getting permission I went in the classroom and caught one of their students drinking a frozen coffee drink that was on the teacher's desk. They told the mom who brought the girl to school the next day with her piggy bank and made her pay for it herself. The child may have not known the value of money, however they do know they had to take something of theirs to replace something that they took that did not belong to them. My son is 8 as well. It's so hard to come up with meaningful punishments that aren't just absolutely draconian. Revoking privileges typically ends up being more of a punishment for myself because if he can't watch TV/Nintendo/computer then he ends up running around the house getting his younger sister wound up instead and I get to spend my time breaking up fights and listening to screeching while I'm trying to do housework. I remember one time my brother destroyed something of my sister's. It was a cheap stuffed animal or something. He refused to pay for a replacement. He was 11 or 12. My father was a journalist before he retired. At the time he was doing some story on the justice system, so he'd made friends with the local magistrate. The magistrate, who normally does only low-level criminal trials, suggested my dad bring my siblings to his courtroom after hours and he held a civil trial and ordered my brother to pay up. Complete with a very official-looking notice to my brother. Apparently the magistrate had done this before. Yeah, my stepmother was around starting when I was 4 amp, my brother was 2. She amp, my dad had full custody for 10 years and since my dad was always at work, her word was law. Full stop. Op raised this kid alongside his biological daughter as though they were both biologically his. The older sister is entitled to space amp, time away. The younger is absolutely old enough to understand that amp, not throw a tantrum. But since she threw a tantrum that included damages to the older sister's property, the consequence of that choice should be having to pay to replace it. Full stop. Again, for the people in the back, the choices you make and your actions have consequences, and sometimes those consequences suck, especially when you've actively chosen to harm someone. NTA